Hello, everyone. We are so excited. Tonight's event is incredible. It is for Jane Pek's The Verifiers. I was so excited to get this title in my hands, and I know that you all are excited to hear about it. So before we begin, we are The Novel Neighbor. We are an independent bookstore and community space in St. Louis, Missouri. We are so excited to be hosting tonight's events. Before we turn it over, I want to introduce tonight's moderator and author, and they're both incredible. So first up is our conversation partner, Jessie Cusutanto. Jessie grew up shuttling back and forth between Indonesia, Singapore, and Oxford. She considers all three places her home. She has a master's from Oxford University, but she has yet to figure out how to say that without sounding obnoxious. And that's in the bio. I'm reading it. I'm not saying it's obnoxious. Jessie has 42 first cousins and 30 aunties and uncles, many of whom live just down the road. When she's not writing, she's gaming with her husband, mostly first-person shooters, or making a mess in the kitchen with her two daughters. So Jessie, we are very excited to have you here, and we'll bring her on in just one second. And Jane Pek, our author of this evening, was born and grew up in Singapore. She holds a BA from Yale University, a JD from the New York University School of Law, and an MFA in fiction from Brooklyn College. Her short fiction has been anthologized in the Best American Short Stories. She currently lives in New York, where she works as a lawyer on top of being an author at a global investment company. So I am bringing Jane on, and I am bringing Jessie on. And thank you both so much for being here. We're very, very excited.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having us. It's great.
Of course.
Yes,
I'm going to
so
stick
excited to
around.
be here.
Yes, I'm going to stick around. If you all who are watching have questions, please drop them in the comments, and then we'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the interview. But I'm going to pass it over to Jane and to Jessie. So I will see you all at the end, and have a good conversation, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cassie. Hey, Jane, I was so excited to read your book. I mean, it was actually sent to me, pretty late in the game. So I thought like, oh, I'm not gonna have time to read the whole thing. I'll just read the first couple of chapters to kind of know what it's about.
Yeah.
And then I did, and I was like, oh my God, I have to keep reading. I can't stop now. It's so good. So can you tell us what it's about, like for those who have yet to pick it up?
Sure. And thanks so much. I mean, it's always great to hear that, you have like trapped someone in your book and they can't stop reading it because they need to find out what happens. So I guess I'd say that my novel is about an online dating detective agency called Veracity, in New York City. And our protagonist, Claudia Lin, joins this agency because she loves Jane Austen and she loves murder mysteries. And she's like, this is my dream job because I basically get to investigate whether or not people are telling the truth about themselves with respect to, people they meet online on dating apps and whatnot. So then she gets a client who has a surprising request. And then this client, I guess I'll spoil it a little, but this client suddenly winds up dead. And so Claudia's like, what really happened? And so she channels her favorite fictional detective. She starts investigating. And in the process, she kind of uncovers a lot more than she had thought she would into a bigger kind of story about, technology and how we use technology and what that plays in the way that we live our lives today. And I guess along the way, she also has to navigate her own kind of difficult immigrant family, her mother and her two older siblings, and kind of figure out like that side of her life as well, in addition to solving the case.
I love it. Like I love how the first part of the book, you know, it was like a straightforward case of like, oh, are these people lying about themselves online? Which, I'm sure all of us have done to like some degree. And I was like, I was really into it, but it's a different kind of mystery. And then I was not expecting the client to suddenly like wind up dead. I was like, whoa, what just happened? Like now it's like, shit got real. So that was amazing. Okay, so I have a lot of questions for you. So I mean, I think that the verifiers is like very twisty and it's also really comedic, but there is like an undercurrent of like darkness, which was very disturbing in like a really, really good way. Um, Actually, I feel like in a way it's almost like Black Mirror-ish in its like portrayal of like modern tech and capitalism.
Mhm.
What inspired you to like tackle so many, big like questions and themes in your book?
Um, so then, yeah, no, that's a really good question. So I think I kind of started out with this novel with the idea of the online dating
Mm-hmm.
detective agency. And I think it was, on my part, like I think at that point I had been online dating, on and off for a few years.
Mm.
And I should say that I actually had a really positive experience online dating. I
Okay.
know, like maybe unusually so. So I met my wife on OkCupid, and she was
Ah.
the first person I met on OkCupid. And not only
Mm-hmm.
that, but I was the
Oh.
first person she met on OkCupid. So, it was like, it actually worked out pretty
Oh
well.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like, you got so lucky.
I know. I feel lucky. I'm not sure if she still
Mhm.
feels lucky, but yeah. So and even when like I met people and maybe we didn't really have a romantic connection, I always felt like I was meeting interesting people who were doing a
Mhm.
variety of things. We like went to watch cool movies, or we like had good conversations. And so it I like online dating was actually a good experience for me. But I think at the same time you always kind of
Mm.
wonder, like about the question of truthfulness, because when
Mhm.
you meet someone online, you're basically looking at the persona that they present to you,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you are kind of taking it on faith that what they're saying is true. And it kind of operates
Mhm.
on two levels, because like sometimes someone might not intentionally be, lying about anything, or kind of, like choosing not to reveal something about themselves, but they might not
Mhm.
just realize how they come across to other people.
Mhm.
So they
Mhm.
might think that they're being entirely truthful about who they are and what they're like, but
Mhm.
actually they're not. And it's just because maybe they just don't know that about themselves. And so kind
Mm.
of from there, like I just kind of thought about how online dating has like what it says about the way that we present ourselves today, like in the
Mhm.
world where so much of our lives is mediated online. And then also like what it means to know someone, like
Mhm.
in today's age where like so often we're interacting with each other, like I mean right now for instance,
Mhm.
electronically or digitally and not in real life. And I also thought it was really interesting how online dating changes the way that the traditional ways that we think of and conduct romance. Instead of meeting someone
Mm.
in school or at work or in a bar, you end up meeting someone like through the internet, where you can kind of
Mhm.
pre-select like the kinds of people you're looking for. Like you want people in a certain
Mhm.
age range, you want people with certain types of interests, people who like to go out or like to stay in. And so you have all that information about someone beforehand, but does that really mean that you know them? And so I think that's where I started with kind of
Mhm.
with the online dating side of it. And then as I wrote, like it kind of felt like so much of this was going on with our technology and with what the tech companies were doing, as we learn more about the types of data that they were collecting about us, and what they
Mm.
were using the data for. And I thought that kind of using the premise of the online dating platforms to just take a look at that, we're just going to raise a forum for me to ask some questions that I was interested in, like how do we use apps today to make our lives
Mhm.
more efficient and more convenient, but at the same
Mhm.
time, what trade-offs do we make in terms of
Mhm.
giving them all this data, and then what do they do with that data? So
Mhm.
yeah, I didn't really want to like kind of reach a conclusion either way. Like I didn't want to say that, oh,
Mhm.
technology is bad and the tech companies are bad, but I guess I just wanted to like raise these questions and like explore them a bit in the novel.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think you did that so well because all of these questions are still haunting me, and um, like you said, you didn't want to make them out to be like the villain or anything. It's just to kind of make us think about like how are we using them and stuff. So I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there. Um, so actually, this brings me to my next question, which, so as I was reading it, I felt like, oh my gosh, this was written, well, like as I told you, I was like thinking, wow, this person is so smart. But I was
Oh.
also thinking, this person really like seems to know a lot about tech. Especially in the matchmaking industry, from like the back end of the things, like not so much like the front facing part of the product, but like how the companies like use our um, you know information and I don't want to spoil it, but there's just a lot of like knowledge
Yeah.
of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Did you like how much research did you have to do, and was it very challenging?
So I will say that I think, I mean, I did do a bit of reading on just kind of
Mm-hmm.
algorithms and how
Mm-hmm.
tech companies have like made them more sophisticated as time goes by. Like for instance, how Netflix algorithm for predicting what you will want to watch next based on what you have seen before has kind of changed
Mm-hmm.
over time. Um, and I think kind of I applied that more general type of reading, like the questions of how well can tech companies use algorithms to predict our behavior, like what we want to buy, where we want to go, what we want to eat. And I applied that
Mm-hmm.
specifically to like kind of I looked at it in the context of online dating. I think
Mm-hmm.
apart from that, just in my work as a lawyer, like I have looked into various issues around like data collection and
Mm,
data privacy. And so
mm.
I like kind of put elements of that into the book as well. But then of course, because it's fiction, so then, I made things a lot scarier than hopefully they actually are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's amazing because it was so believable, and I totally bought that that is what is going on in reality.
Oh no, maybe it is. I don't know actually.
Yeah.
That
I
would
didn't
be
even like
scary.
Google it or anything. I just took like your book as like nonfiction in that sense.
Well, yeah, hopefully not all elements of
Yeah.
it are like nonfiction.
Yes, I hope so too. There was also like a family aspect in the book, which was delved into. And I found the family dynamics very complicated and actually really heartbreaking.
Hmm.
What made you decide to give Claudia such a difficult like family background?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, and I think this surprises some people, who have read the book when I say
Mm-hmm.
it, but Claudia actually she only showed up in kind of like one of the final iterations of the novel. So for the longest time, I was actually writing the story from the third person instead of the first person, and I just had a different protagonist altogether.
Oh
Um,
wow, okay.
yeah, I know it's funny now because I feel like one of the things that people really enjoy is like Claudia's character and her voice.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it took me a while to settle on her. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually be interested in hearing your own experience as someone who has written, a book with an Asian female
Mm-hmm.
character with a complicated family.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I hesitated a bit actually about making my
Mm-hmm.
protagonist Asian. And I think it was
Mm.
because, like, so I always knew that I wanted to write a character who was a gay female because I felt
Mm-hmm.
like growing up, I never got to read those characters be protagonists
Mm-hmm.
and have adventures. And so I really wanted that. But then that made me hesitate a bit about also making her Asian because then I was like, oh, is this too close kind of thing
Mm.
to me? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think I kind of resisted that for a while. And then eventually I just felt like without making Claudia who she is, which is like a second generation Chinese American immigrant who grew up in New York, with two like siblings and with kind of a complex mother character. Like I felt like I didn't really understand who my previous protagonist was. Like I didn't have a sense of her family and her backstory, and so I couldn't really understand how she would act and behave in like the present day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just like switched altogether. And I think Claudia's character, including her family, just kind of came up really organically. And I think it was like I myself grew up as one of three siblings. So I really like that dynamic of having like three siblings, and you're like squabbling and there's a lot of resentment, but then also like love, and there's all the layers of like what is said and unsaid and all that shared history that you have. But I did also want to explore that idea of having kind of like cultural differences that come from different members of the family kind of being different levels of immigrants, I guess. And so in terms of Claudia's mother having grown up in Taiwan and come here versus her siblings who were kids in Taiwan and then came over when they were still kids, versus Claudia who has only ever known America, and how they relate to each other and to the society that they are in now, and kind of how that affects the ways that they interact with each other, and kind of try and seek their mother's approval in different ways, and how they perceive the ways that they are viewed by their mother. I think with respect to the mother, I did also feel like I wanted to write a complex mother character. Like my own mother is not at all like Claudia's mother. She's very nice and very supportive.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, I know. And and I love her very much, but I felt like I did want to write a mother who was more complicated, and just kind of take a look at what that might mean in terms of how she and her children related to each other.
Yeah. I mean, I think you did that so well. And I mean, it was such a difficult situation where she had to kind of leave her first two kids back in Taiwan. And I love that you had that, because I feel like it's a very unusual situation, and I feel like a lot of people wouldn't understand why someone would do that. But then I thought you portrayed it so well that, she didn't really have much of a choice. So that was really touching to read. So going back to the mystery, we talked about how complicated it is. There are so many different suspects. Well, I mean, for the longest time, we don't even know if wait, I'm trying to I'm gonna spoil it. Okay,
Without
so
spoiling, I
it's
know.
very complicated. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know from the beginning what really happened?
So the answer is no. And I think the thing is, so I'm bad with plotting in the sense that, so I don't outline. I don't know if you do, but I've always kind of felt, I mean, to me, I've always been like, oh, it stifles my creativity, because if I outline, then I have to write each chapter, following the outline.
Right.
But I think as a result of that, and the thing is also, I think when I start a novel, like what comes to me first is the premise. So here I had the premise of, oh, here's this online dating detective agency, but I didn't have a plot. So I was like, okay, that's this agency, but what are they going to do? So they need to solve mysteries. But I didn't really have a good mystery in mind. And so I think I was kind of wandering around in the wilderness for a long time, trying to figure out, like, I would like set up, certain cases for them to solve, but then I myself wouldn't know what the mystery in that case was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so like for the longest time, I actually did not have a murder, because like the mysteries that I had them looking at were kind of like quieter mysteries, like mysteries of why someone would be unfaithful, or why someone would choose to lie about an aspect of themselves. and then I felt like as I went along, like I think the reason why I decided to lean more into that classic murder mystery plot line is because that really like I feel like the murder mystery plot is like it provides an engine because there's great momentum and you can kind of follow it along. It's like someone comes along, they have a strange request, they die, and then right away, you know, the plot is in motion. Like you have suspects, you have clues, you have red herrings, and so you have your detective like off to figure out what happened in a way that I found was helpful to me because then I could just kind of write towards her trying to figure out what happened. But then for the longest time, I myself was also trying to figure out what happened. And I kind of played with different ideas. I think early versions of the novel were actually less resolved. So they kind of had an idea of who did it, but there wasn't that same kind of like getting a confirmation that was actually the case. And it was a lot more amorphous in terms of the exact also trying not to spoil things, the exact individual who committed the crime. And then I think there, like my editor was really helpful just in terms of, you know, helping me figure out like how specific I needed to get in order for it to be satisfying to the reader at the end of the day. Like even if I didn't wrap up everything at the end, like there was enough I guess there was enough of a conclusion for people to feel like, yeah, you know, like this is okay for an ending.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the ending, it felt like there could be a sequel, or is there like a sequel?
I mean, I would love to write a sequel. Like I do have a lot more ideas about, you know, like Claudia and what would happen to her and the other verifiers and her family. But there's nothing. It's all in my head. There's nothing official in the works. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I was really like so prepared, you know, to like, yeah, I want to read more Claudia.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would love to write. Like, it's just a fun voice to write in, I think.
Yeah, because she's a little bit, you know, she's just a little bit like she's so humorous, but I wouldn't say it's like snarky or anything. Like it feels quite earnest. A lot of her humor. So I really enjoyed it. I love her voice.
Oh, thanks.
So what was the journey for you know, the verifiers, like to like from you writing it to you getting it published? Did you always know that you wanted to be an author?
Yeah, so I guess yes and no in a way. Like, so I feel like I've been one of those people, like as a kid, you know, I was always like coming up with stories and writing them down. And so I think I knew that writing was something that I always very much enjoyed doing. And I think probably the one thing that I have done consistently like throughout my life probably. But I think you know, like you go to college and then you're like you feel like you need to get a job after college, but then you know you're not sure what to do really. So then you're like, let me put that off by going to law school. Then you go to law school and then you get a job at a law firm and then you're like, okay, here's my job. And then you kind of, you know, go on to the law firm and then you like, you know, work there. And I think that was kind of the path that I was taking. And I was trying to write on the side, but very slowly while I was working. I used to, before my current job, which is as an in-house lawyer, I was working as a mergers and acquisitions attorney at a New York law firm. And so like, you know, it was just hard to squeeze in the time and also have the mental space to write. And then I think I was maybe like 6 years into the law firm life, and I just felt like I think it coincided with me like turning 30 and feeling like I was very old all of a sudden, and I was like, oh, okay, if I don't, you know, if I don't kind of try my best to give this writing thing a shot, then I'm afraid that, you know, it could be 10 years later and then I will still just not really have had anything. And so I was like, okay, I so then I left the law firm. I did my MFA.
Mm-hmm.
I got worried
Mm.
about making no money as a wannabe writer, so then I went back to the law.
Mhm.
But then I was kind of like trying to plug away at like a project. And I think going to for me, and I think not all authors do an MFA or think that, it's for them. But I think for me personally, the MFA experience was really good.
Mhm.
I think like I made some really good friends. I had really good
Mhm.
professors. I learned a lot. And I think most
Mhm.
importantly, like it was just dedicating that time in my life to just writing and trying to be
Mhm.
better and trying to finish something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So was that book the Verifiers that you were working on at your MFA program?
Yes. Yes and no again, I think, because I did come
Mhm.
up with the idea for the verifiers, like I think the spring before I went into the MFA, so like a few months before then. But that version of the book was
Mm.
just really, really different. Like it had the idea of veracity, and it actually had
Mhm.
like Komla and Bex, who are the two other verifiers in that agency apart from Claudia. And those personalities were kind of the same throughout, but the protagonist was totally different. The plot was totally different,
Mhm.
and the voice and the style was also kind of different. And so I think like through my MFA, I was working on that as one project and then also trying to write short stories. And
Mm.
then I just like kind of, yeah, wrote a lot of versions of the verifiers until I think eventually
Mhm.
it came to the version where like I had Claudia as the protagonist and the story was more of a murder mystery. And then I kind of felt like, okay, now I can try going out to agents.
Oh, wow. Okay. So went through so many different versions. That's so, yeah, that's amazing. Also, did your parents kind of freak out when you left the law to do an MFA?
um, I think so. That my parents have actually been really nice
Mm-hmm.
about my writing. I mean, I think kind of their position was always, well, you need to be able to support yourself. But then
Mm-hmm.
when I was like, okay, I'm going to leave my law firm job and I'm going to move back to Singapore for a year and I'm going to camp out at your
Mm-hmm.
house while I try to write this novel, they were
Mm-hmm.
actually pretty cool about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Oh,
I actually I took a year off between, like,
yeah.
I finished the law firm and then I went back to Singapore for a year because I wanted to see if I could write the novel without doing an
Mm-hmm.
MFA. And then
Mm-hmm.
that was just a bit difficult because it was kind of isolating, and I didn't know if
Mm-hmm.
what I was working on would ever see the light of day, or you know
Yeah.
like do any, like, kind of make any kind of difference. And so that was why I decided to try doing an MFA where there would be something that was more structured and I would be
Yeah.
kind of in a community of writers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so wonderful that you have like um that family support and that they were able to kind of help out while you were um writing the book. I mean, I think that's so vital to so many of us. That's really nice to hear. Um, so do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
um I feel like I've received a lot of great advice
Mm-hmm.
along the way. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think at the end of the day, I do feel like it does come down to putting in the hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I do feel like, yeah, you at the end of the day, you do just have to sit down and write
Mm-hmm.
and try to write. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I myself try to write every day, but I think some
Mm-hmm.
people don't. Like they prefer
Mm-hmm.
to take days off and then work
Mm-hmm.
only some days of the week. um but I think that whatever it is, it like you do need that routine and you do need to put in those hours. And I think you
Mm-hmm.
do need to also read a lot and to think
Mm-hmm.
about what you're writing. And I think the other thing that I feel like has kind of helped me try to think about what I can write is to think about what you could write that only you could write, I guess. And I think that was actually part of why I ended up like having Claudia be my protagonist, because I was like, I feel like this character is someone who only I could write, and so I should write her, even if, you know, I was a bit concerned at first about, you know, maybe like kind of her being Asian and gay and female was like, you know, a bit too much. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I totally believe in like, you gotta put in the time to just write, even when you don't feel like it. So I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, but so what's your own writing routine? Because I will say I'm very impressed by how many books you are able to write. I mean, do you like how do you do that, I guess?
So sorry, I can see my
That's cool.
daughter in the background. What are you doing? She's just like, okay, she's just dancing next to me. Okay, I'm just gonna ignore her. Anyway, yeah, so I was actually writing like in the afternoons or in the evenings.
Yeah.
But I kind of realized like um after I had kids, I like by the time, it's evening, I'm just done. Like I'm so done with anything that requires like brain cells. I just want to like sit down in front of the TV and like veg out.
Yeah.
And so I realized like, okay, this is not working. So then I started waking up really early to write, and that really worked so well for me because there's like a really hard deadline in place, which is my kids getting up, so I can't like procrastinate that long.
Yeah.
Like before, I would like kind of sit in front of the computer for hours and hours and procrastinate for like a lot of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I just like wake up very early, and then I get my 2,000 words a day done, and then that is it. Like the rest of the day I'm doing a lot of other things, so I
Yeah.
don't think of my writing at all. So it's actually like a really good break from the writing. So I don't like burn out, but I write every weekday when I'm drafting a book, and then I take weekends off
Yeah.
because I find it really important to kind of give yourself a break.
Yeah. And so I feel like now I'm asking you questions, but I am also curious. So do you work on multiple books at the same time? Or do you kind of go book by book? Because I know, you write in different genres and like with different voices and styles, like some are funnier and some are, like darker. So like how do you, yeah, I'm just curious if they're all like parallel tracking, or if you're like, I have to finish this one
Yeah.
and then move on to the next.
Yeah, I'm more like that. Like I definitely have to finish one before moving on to the other. I have had to like sometimes, to juggle your deadlines.
Yeah.
So I've had to like put something aside for like a week or so to like when edits come in for a different book.
Yeah.
Then I will like sometimes I just have to do the edits first. So I do that before, coming back to the thing I'm working on. But I really don't like doing that because it's such a change with the voice. Like
Yeah.
at one point I think I was writing my adult suspense, which is very dark. And then I had to do an edit on, I believe it was my children's book. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is total whiplash,
Yeah.
And I think the characters are a little bit too like bitter and resentful for a children's book.
Yeah, like suddenly,
Yeah.
like chapter 12,
Yes.
they like turn into adults.
Yeah. Yeah. Who who are like stuck in a bitter marriage or something.
Yeah.
So I really, ideally, I just work on one book at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm super impressed by how you're able to like manage all these different projects.
Well, I'm very impressed by how you can juggle like, doing the law and writing, because I just, I don't know, like, like I said, by the end of the day, I'm just like done. I don't want to have to think. I don't know how you do that.
I think not having small children to take care of it helps. So yeah, but what I'm actually most impressed by is always like parents of young children, and I feel like kind of just having to like navigate that, and especially these days with COVID and stuff. So I'm always like, wow,
Yeah.
you guys have so much energy and need so little sleep. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I am struggling because as you can see, my 6-year-old is currently doing online school, and
oh,
it's just been
okay.
like really hard on everyone, especially on her, because
Yeah,
it's so boring,
yeah.
and I think it's so unfair to like have a 6-year-old like have to sit in front of a computer. But yeah, it's tough. Oh, sorry, hang on.
Oh
Wait,
yeah, sure.
Emmy, go. She's on a break, but now her class is like
Oh,
starting
I
up
see.
again.
Her online class, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, go. So speaking of children, how proud are your parents of you? I mean, I'm not even
Oh,
gonna tell my parents about you because they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, why can't you be like her?"
what? No way. No, yeah. No, it's funny because I feel like my parents they don't really read fiction and stuff. And so
Mm.
to them, they're like, "Oh, how cute! You have a book up,"
Oh
So then
no.
they're like, and then I brought back a galley copy.
Uh-huh.
When we were still proofreading, and then my mother was like, "Okay, I'm keeping this copy of your book," and I was like,
Aw.
"This is not really the book, right? Like the book is still gonna come out in like 6 months' time."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I I suspect that for them, it's probably just they're like because I feel like I've always talked about being a writer and, wanting to like
Mm-hmm.
get published. And so I think probably everyone in my family is just like astounded that, this actually ended up happening. Yeah.
Oh. Have
Yeah.
they
I mean,
like boasted to their friends and stuff about it? I hope that they have.
I think so. But then I'm always like, oh, maybe you should read the book first before, you're like, oh, look, my daughter wrote a book. And then, it's like, you don't know what's in it, which, yeah. I mean, what was like, do your parents read your stuff?
So my mom does. My
Mm.
dad doesn't because his English is not good enough.
Mm.
Um, so, but he's happy about it. But my mom reads, and then she'll like scold me for a lot of it. She's like, "Oh, why do
Yeah.
you write such stories about like murder? Why can't you write something nice?" But she reads it, so
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally feel like that's what my mother would say all the time too. She was like, "Why do you have to write about like unhappy things or
Mhm.
dark things? Why can't you write about like
Has
happy
she
things?"
has she read it?
So I think she's in the process of reading it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, with reading the galley copy because that's the one that
Okay.
she
Yeah,
held
yeah,
on
yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so curious to know what she's gonna say. You have to update us on her reaction.
She'll be
Because
like,
like
this
my
is
mom is
rubbish.
like very typical Asian
Yeah.
parents. She's every time I ask her, she's like, it's okay lah.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I love like the depiction of the different aunts and like their personalities and how they kind of have different rivalries with each other. So I mean,
Hmm.
when your mother read all that, like, did she see herself in any of that, or like, your actual
Um,
aunts?
yeah, it's so funny because my mom actually has 3 sisters. And
Yeah.
so when she found out I was like writing this, she thought it was like literally her and her sisters.
Yeah.
And I was telling her like, well, no, because I don't want like anyone to get angry or, you know, whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I took all of my aunts and uncles' personalities and like I jumbled them up. You know, I changed them. Um, and then, you know, I kind of formed the different characters. And so when my mom read it, she was like, well, this is not like me and my sisters. And she was like, I'm not like this. I'm not like the mom character. And I said like, well, yeah, because like the mom character is actually based on dad. And then she was like, oh my God, no, like that is totally your dad. And then she was like asking, so who is like this one based on and who's that one based on? And I would tell her, and she's like, oh my God, you're so right. It is like that person. But you know, I did a well enough, like good enough job that she couldn't tell.
She couldn't tell without you like pointing it out.
Yes, yeah. So
Yeah.
no one can get angry at me.
No, I actually think that's really clever, and I always think that it's really fun when you're like, oh, this person is actually based on that, and then once you say it, then they see it, and they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course, that's like what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, is your mom going to be like shocked by the mom character
I know
in
that's,
your
that's like
book?
from the start, like even before I handed over this galley copy, I was like, the mother is not at all like you. Like I did
No, my
not base the
goodness
mother
me.
on you. Yeah.
But is she gonna
So yeah.
believe you?
I hope so. She did text me the other day to say that, oh, she thought that the scene between Claudia and, her siblings was very funny, smiley emoji.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, that's
Oh, smiley
good. Yeah,
emoji. That's
smiley
such a
emoji.
that's like a huge thing.
I know that is all I can hope for. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Is she gonna ask you a lot of like awkward questions, I wonder? Because like my mom would ask me like, how do you know about these drugs, like these recreational drugs? She's like, what is marijuana? And then she literally said like, what is weed? What is MDMA? What is like blah blah blah. She's like, how do you know about all these things?
And you're like, oh dear, now I have to confess my secret life to you.
I know. A secret life as a cocaine dealer on the
Yeah,
side.
exactly. Who managed to like write like 4 novels. um, yeah, so far none of the awkward questions have. What I'm concerned is what if she starts asking about my online dating history? That would be awkward, I think.
Ah,
I didn't mean to pop on for audience questions when we got to online dating history because that sounds very fun. I just with
Oh no, I'm very happy to move on from this. My mother did ask if this would be recorded so that she could watch it after. So we should stop.
Oh, your mom's been put on the spot tonight.
Yeah.
So I have a few audience questions, and then we do our novel neighbor rapid fire questions at the end of all of our interviews. So these are some fun ones. One of them, first of all, I do want to say, Jessie, we did get several comments saying how cute your children are. So I will
thank you.
This is a question to both of you. So when you write books, what is your process? Do you write chronologically, or do you outline and then you write specific scenes and then piece them together? I think this is especially interesting because both of you have like mystery elements to your books. So how does like the final product come together?
You can go first.
Okay, sure. So I actually used to be a pantser, which is like, I wrote by the seat of my pants and didn't have like a plot. But now I can't do that anymore because it's like too chaotic. So now I am like an obsessive outliner. I usually have like a 6 to 7 page synopsis before I start writing the book, and so I do write chronologically. And before I write, I will do like a chapter outline.
Oh wow.
I'm like obsessed with it.
Well, your novel is tightly plotted, so that makes sense.
Thank you.
Jane?
But oh yeah. Oh, but I do want to ask Jessie a question about that, which is how have you found that kind of changing your process so much has changed your experience of writing? Like, do you enjoy it the same, or like maybe you enjoy it differently? Like, how has it actually changed? Like the writing part
Yeah.
of it.
I was kind of scared that like if I outlined, then I would kind of get bored because I'm like,
Mm.
oh well, I already know how the story goes. There is a little element of that, but it's like small enough that I can kind of ignore it, because it has like vastly improved like my productivity, I guess, because I no longer have like this like I used to spend like 20 minutes or an hour just sitting in front of the computer like thinking, oh gosh, what's gonna happen next, because
Mm.
I don't know anything at all. But so now with the outline, I've eliminated that because I'm like, I look at the outline, then I'm like, oh, okay, I know what's supposed to happen next, but I don't know the details. Like I didn't know that all the aunties were going to have like all this rivalry and conflict until I actually started writing it.
Yeah.
So that was not in the outline, and that was like a fun discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because so I do still write by the seat of my pants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of that is because I am a bit, like afraid that, oh, if I do outline, then it will take the fun out of it. But I think with that said, my process is very inefficient because of that. I do kind of like I start with a premise, like an idea, and then from there I have to try and find everything else. Like I have to figure out my characters, and then once I figure out the characters, I have to figure out what they're gonna do, which is the plot part. And so I did actually find it really hard writing a murder mystery because I feel like it's so important to come up with a clever and satisfying way that the crime is committed. And then
Yeah.
also like that it's discovered, like how the detective kind of pieces it all together. And so like that was really the part that I had the most trouble with the verifiers, because I just kept kind of writing my way into like, like walls, and then I would have to be like, okay, this is not really going anywhere. Let me try something else. And then, it would kind of like meander along. So I may try outlining. I don't know for like the next book.
Yeah, let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
It'll
I'll be
good
like
to
twice
give
as
you
fast.
what you're doing clearly works. Yeah,
Yeah.
mystery is definitely the genre that I can't wrap my head around how people do it, because when it all comes together, I'm like, how did you? I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And speaking of, we have a question. If you were to write in a different genre other than the ones that you have written in or one that you have written in, what genre would you be most interested in writing in next?
So for me that's easy. So I actually really love science fiction and fantasy. And that is actually my biggest love. Like I grew up reading, like I said, I was like a nerd. So grew up reading like fantasy and all that. And I love the whole like epic adventures and magic and good and evil. So yes. So I think I would love to write something that is both like one work that is more science fictiony and one work that is more fantasy. And then I would also be interested in writing something that is more of like a play on like an espionage spy thriller type novel. So the way the Verifiers was like a murder mystery, but not really, not like that classic murder mystery. So I like to try that with a spy novel.
Ooh, that's fun. Jessie?
That's so funny that you said sci-fi fantasy, because I was immediately like adult epic fantasy.
Oh really?
I'm going to write one day. I actually tried writing one last year, but I had to shelve it because the voice, it was multiple points of view, and the voices, like a lot of them were just not coming. And so I thought, okay, you know what, this is a sign that I need to trunk this for now, and then I'll come back to it later. but it's forever like, there at the back of my mind, like speaking to me. So one day.
Now I want to I want you guys to collaborate on some kind of.
I
That's
know.
big
I
fans.
feel like it'd be so good.
Yeah.
We have a question asking what authors or other works have been inspirational or formative for you in your writing.
Sure. I always say the same, which is Sir Terry Pratchett. I've read
Oh.
all of his books. Some of them I've read like 6 times or something. But he was so amazing. His books are brilliant, and the world building is incredible.
I love that.
Yeah, it's hard because I feel like I went through a lot of phases of reading, like when I was younger, and I think those have probably all kind of shaped the way that I think about writing now. So I think there was a phase where I was reading like these like the dead white male canon, so like Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Steinbeck, Truman Capote. And I think especially Truman Capote, which was why I had to put in a reference to Breakfast at Tiffany's in the Verifiers, because I just love that novel. And then I think I also went through like a period of more like magical realism with like the Latin American authors, like Borges and Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and then also like with like kind of on the in South Asian side with Salman Rushdie, and then on the Japanese side with Haruki Murakami. So I think like, and for a time I was really enamored with trying to write like that, but I think ultimately I felt like that was not really my style. But I think kind of just all that reading of those authors that I did worked. And then of course I have to say Jane Austen, because like I feel like just the humor and the irony is just so well done, and also so much of what she says about relationships are still really true. And so I think some of that comes out. And then otherwise I would have to say Kazuo Ishiguro, because I really admire how he's a literary author, but every book that he writes is kind of in a different genre. Like he's written science fiction and kind of more fairy tale stuff and a detective story, and and of course Remains of the Day is just like oof. Yeah. So so yeah, those would probably be mine.
Those are great answers. And I love a lot of what you love, and that's great. Do you have types of characters, like archetypes, that you feel yourself gravitating towards, like that you always want to write, like a fun, like are there types of characters that are always in your stories?
That's a really interesting question. So I will say that probably yes, that and I wonder if this is a bit of a failing of mine, but I do get quite invested in my characters, and especially my protagonist. And so I think I'm drawn towards writing a protagonist that is more of like the funny, appealing kind of character, which is how I ended up with someone like Claudia. So like kind of humorous, self-aware, a bit self-deprecating, someone who you feel like the reader would enjoy and want to root for. And I think the other type of character, which doesn't show up in this book, I think, but which I do know that I'm drawn to, is this idea of a character who is really powerful but cannot get the one thing that they want. And I find that really compelling. Yeah, as an idea.
Yeah. For myself, I guess I don't know. I guess I would say maybe I'm drawn. I think I'm always drawn to characters who feel like they don't belong. And yeah, I would say that shows up a lot in a lot of my books. Like a lot of characters who move to a different school, so then they're like the new person, or that they're just like because they're like kids of immigrant parents, and so then they don't quite fit in. So there's a lot of that. And then they accidentally murder someone. So
That's-
What a personality trait.
yes.
All right, we are going to move into some rapid questions, and they're easy and they're silly, and you don't need to overthink anything. If you were not currently with partners, would you rather meet someone at a bar or on a dating app?
Oh my gosh, what a question. On a bar, at a bar, yeah, at a bar.
I would read them on a dating app.
That makes sense. What is your coffee shop order?
Ooh,
Mine is an iced latte. Very simple.
I have like this really annoying order that I feel like baristas are probably a bit. I'll be like, well, first I'll be like, what size does your Americano come in? Then they will
Oh my
say it.
gosh.
And then I'll be like, could I get the 12-ounce Americano, but could you fill it just to 8 ounces with hot water and then the extra 4 ounces with steamed low-fat milk? Then at that point, they're like, oh my God. Yes, that is my coffee order. I don't get coffee that often. So, I'm not like perpetually torturing baristas like all over New York.
That's amazing. I love that order.
Are you handwriters or do you type?
I'm a typer. Yeah.
That makes sense. What music is on your writing playlist?
Mine is silence. I cannot abide by noise when I'm writing. I will get very snappy.
I have to also say that, yeah, I can't listen to anything when I write.
Do you make playlists for your books? Like, do you have like music that reminds you of your books?
So I think, and it's funny because I did actually just write kind of I guess book notes, like book music notes, for the verifiers. So I will say that not so much playlists for my books, but at least with respect to this, like I was channeling a lot of the music that I listened to when I was in my mid-20s in New York trying to figure out what to do. So there was like early Vampire Weekend, a lot of Belle and Sebastian, and Camera Obscura. So I think, I just had like that kind of twee, sentimental, wistful pop.
I only did a playlist for one of my books, which was my adult suspense. And it just had a lot of Fiona Apple, a lot of like angry, bitter songs.
You've got to get a lot of Gen Z pop for your new YA.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true.
What are you both reading right now?
I'm reading Such a Fun Age, which is amazing. I feel like everybody in the world should read it. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I haven't read that, but yeah, that's definitely on my list. I think right now I'm reading Visitors by Anita Bruckner, which is like about loneliness and aging, but which makes it sound more depressing than it is, I guess. I just feel like I'm really interested in kind of seeing how literature depicts it, and I feel like that's not really something, a topic that we talk about in society, and so I wanted to read that. She does it very well. And I'm reading this book called The Sports Gene, which is about the science behind extraordinary athletic performance, which explains why some people are Olympians and some people like me have zero hand-eye coordination, I think.
Same.
That's why I'm sad but true. Yeah.
All right, I have one question left for you all, which is, what are you working on right now?
Oh, I would love to know that.
Anything you can announce? Jessie, I know that you just had a release. As did you, Jane.
Yes.
So I think right now I'm probably like kind of two things. So one thing is I am kind of brainstorming and thinking about a sequel to the Verifiers. And I think the other thing is it's actually more along the lines of when I said I wanted to write something more science fiction-y. I am kind of writing a novel that is kind of a step up from the tech in the Verifiers. So it's set in like a futuristic Singapore plus a virtual reality medieval China that is basically like history on steroids. And it kind of combines like science fiction with like classic Chinese sword fighting quest narrative, and so yeah, it's coming. But yes, the plotting is an issue.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So I'm actually on a very much needed break, although it's not as much of a break because like my kid is like home from school now. But I just finished writing my YA rom-com, and so I was actually really looking forward to writing something dark after that because I really like to switch it up. You know, I'm like, oh, it's too happy. But for now, I'm on a break, so I'm like, I'm just not even gonna think about writing until March, which is so soon.
Yeah, which is in like 4
Yeah.
days.
I know.
You should check back in 4 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for both being on tonight. It was really, really fun, and it was a great conversation. We are so excited, Jane, for your debut. If folks are looking to pick up a copy of the Verifiers, we have them in stock at the Novel Neighbor. We're very excited to share it with you. It's such a fun world, and thank you so much for making it, because now we all get to talk about it and sell it.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for hosting this event. It was really great. And thank you so much, Jessie, for, you know, waking up early and like, you know, dialing in. No, that's the wrong term. But like, you know, streaming it from all the way from Indonesia. Really
yes,
appreciate
of course.
it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
it was so fun.
Jessie did not get enough credit for it being 7:50 a.m.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you both. Thanks everybody who watched, and we will talk very soon. Have a good one.
Great. Thanks so much.
Bye.